Michael, thank you so much for spending the time with us.
That's good. Nice to see you, David.
I really wanted to talk to you at this boat show because a lot of viewers of my YouTube channel want to be in the yachting business, or they are already in the yachting business, but they want to do more and more. You're the sales director of Lürssen, which is a fascinating job, I would imagine. And I'm just interested, first of all, to know how you got into the yachting industry and what journey led you to this point.
It's like most things in life. It happens kind of by accident. I came from the Middle East back to Europe, worked for an Italian man called Leopoldo Rodriguez, and I was his assistant in his capacity as president of the board of a listed company in Milan.
What age were you when you were doing that?
Well, that was in 91, so I was 35. 35? 66, 76, 86? 35. And one of the first things I did in my capacity as assistant is sell his 51%, which gave him the title of president of the board. And he then asked me to go and sort things out and help him out in one of the companies he still owned, which was a little boat builder in Varazze in Italy called Baglietto. So I went there in 91 in the fall and started dabbling about the world of yachts. Didn't know anything about it beforehand, but learned very quickly.
So you made yourself useful in your capacity of assisting him in his other business.
Yeah.
And then he sent you to...
Well, he owned shipyards already. His family manufactured hydrofoils in Messina, and it's Rodriguez with a Q.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and they're one of the only people really doing hydrofoils in a major way in those days. And he had Baglietto as a partial investment together with other shareholders. And I went there once the summer of 91, and during that summer there was a client, and we sold him a boat, and I kind of got stuck in the business of selling yachts or making people buy yachts.
And how long were you at Baglietto for?
Well, there were very tough times in the early 90s, and I left there in 95 after somebody introduced me to Peter Lürssen, who had plans to revamp and expand the yachting division at Lürssen. And then I joined as an advisor in 95 and as an employee in 96. And I've been at Lürssen ever since.
And back then, what sort of size yachts were Lürssen building? What was the industry in the market like in the 90s?
Well, there was an outlier at the time, which was Limitless. She was 96 meters long. She was in build when I joined. And the boats before were, of course, smaller than that. And then gradually, as the market developed into an audience that was receptive to larger boats, we were quite well kitted up for that purpose because of the physical capabilities of the shipyard. So,
listening to you talk, you make it sound like things just kind of happened and developed naturally, but you must have had certain skill sets that made you successful, first of all as the Italian gentleman's assistant, then at Baglietto, and then at Lürssen. So what sort of skill sets do you think you developed over the years?
I don't know if I can really put a point on it, but I'd have to say I have an advantage that I speak my languages, and I have an inquisitive mind, and I have discovered very quickly that you can only dabble in the world of these sales if you behave as naturally as possible. If you try to perform and be something else, you will be found out and you'll look like a regular idiot. So it's much better to be yourself, and then it either works out or it doesn't. And my philosophy has never been to try to sell something, but rather than to put somebody in a position to buy. And that is a subtle difference, but it does work.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I read an interview with a very, very successful yacht broker who said exactly the same thing. He said, we're not salespeople, we're here to just make things happen, bring people together. Languages, which languages do you speak?
Well, I'm Dutch, so I speak Dutch. I went to French school, so I learned French. My grandparents lived in Italy, so I learned Italian. I speak German. And I speak, what have I forgotten? How many?
I don't know.
German,
English is pretty good.
English, yeah. I went to boarding school in the UK. And then I picked up a little bit of Spanish, and my wife is Swedish, so I learned Swedish. My children are Swedish, so I dabble a little bit in Swedish, but to be honest, it's very rusty. So it needs a lot of practice.
I mean, the years that you've been involved in yachting are really years of great growth in the industry. I was working in '94 for Ferretti, and I look to the way that Ferretti's grown from '94 till now big group. Do you think there's going to be a lot more growth in the industry? Do you think we're going to keep on this trajectory?
I don't know. There's two limiting factors. One is the availability of buyers, but the second is the availability of production. And what Lürssen does is not something you can ramp up indiscriminately without consequences, because we rely on a vast network of subcontractors or co-makers, whatever you want to call them, and that it has a limited capability. So I would think that rather the market is pretty much maxed out, and I think it's important to focus on expanding the visibility and the positivity of yacht ownership to an audience that right now doesn't even know about it or looks at it with a and I think we have a lot of convincing to do there as a collective.
Yeah, I completely agree. And can you talk me through I'm sure there is no average sale because they must all be very different, but what are the stages from the time that somebody makes their initial inquiry to the time they actually launch the yacht? And what's your involvement in that process?
Well, when they first contact us, it can be one of two things. They can either have what I call luggage, so they have a design, they have a team, they have experience, etc., or they don't. And then we just try to manage the communication and the development of the proposal that is for that one specific client in such a way that they are tempted to talk to us with more interest than with others. And hopefully we get that right more often than not.
The question as well I wanted to ask you, as much as anything for my own personal benefit, one of the problems or challenges that I encounter with a YouTube channel is it attracts people who are dreamers. And if they're going to dream, they dream big. You don't dream of owning a Sea Ray, or you may, but you dream of owning 150 meter Lürssen. And so often I'll get inquiries from people who are they know what they want. I want 140 meter, this, that. How do you qualify the inquiries that you get to the point that you know that it's worth spending time with that particular inquiry?
I think it's not as complicated as one would think, because the level of inquiries for the larger boat is not that high. This is really a very, very small market. And over time you develop a few instincts into assessing which project is worth pursuing. It's not only whether it's a credible client, but it's also how credible are you in the relationship with this client, because you cannot be a fit for all person. So there are clients that it will just not gel. And so you have to identify those and play with that concept, and then hopefully you're betting on the right horse. But our batting average used to be a little bit higher. It is not as good as it used to be because there is a little bit more demand, and therefore you have to work harder and more and lose more. That's life.
You very kindly invited me to be part of Lürssen Live,
yes,
which the first one was about size matters, or does size matter? And I remember Peter Lürssen as well mentioning that you don't just do 100 meter plus yachts, but actually I think he was saying between 50 and 80 meter. Is that still an important sector of the market?
Absolutely. So from building the 55 meter Moonsand, and of which we made quite a lot of noise about, which was unusual for us, that has brought us into contact with many more different people that would probably not have considered us because they think we only build big boats. And that has resulted in several contracts, not quite as 55 meters, but more 70 to 80 meters. And so in that respect, the adventure has been a success, and these boats will be coming on stream in the next year or two. And we're confident that we'll be able to bank on that, to continue to build boats in that size range, which is important to us.
Now this morning on my YouTube channel, I put a photograph of you.
Oh dear.
And I made the comment that we'd be talking this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I asked people if they had any questions for you. I'm
not your daddy.
No. But the resemblance is striking. So Michael, I asked some viewers if I had any questions for you. One of the questions in particular I want to put to you, because it was a very clever one. And they're saying, Let me find it. This is from Cesar Garcia. And he asks, I'd like to ask, what is the future of green tech impact on the aesthetic of yacht design?
I think on the aesthetics, you know, I mean, if I understand the question correctly, the green impact refers to things that you are doing to mitigate the influence, the negative effect on the environment. So one of the things we're doing and quite invested in is our use of fuel cell technology from methanol, with hydrogen reformed from methanol. And from the aesthetics, there will be absolutely no impact. There is a design impact in the technical design of the yacht, in the sense that you would have to live with lesser range or a reallocation of spaces, but which is actually very positive, because if you can do a fuel cell or a methanol propelled boat, so in a combination between fuel cell and engines that run on methanol, you could really liberate the traditional positioning of the equipment and redesign the interior workings of yachts in different ways. A little bit like Olivia O, that has all the mechanics all the way forward, and then you just concentrate on the living technology in a much larger and more practicable way. But your boat, from the exterior aesthetics, would probably still look the same. There's a lot of changes happening in shapes and things, but most of the people that talk to us want things that are timeless. And you can do a modern timeless, you can do a classic timeless, but it's important for a boat that you design now, that is delivered in 4 years, that it looks good another 5 years after that. So your idea is to be good for at least 10 to 15 years.
Because of course, at Monaco last year, you used Project Alice as a starting point to discuss hydrogen fuel cell. And Project Alice was really quite extreme in the yacht design, but you don't need to have a design like that to benefit from hydrogen fuel cells.
No, you don't. But the one thing Alice has done very well is to open doors to thinking boats the way they're allowed in a different way. And the way Jim, our designer who did this boat, looked at it, he focused on the way a yacht is used more today than it was in the past, and the outdoor life, etc. And you're actually only inside only for very few things. And that philosophy we have found back in some of the other designs we're doing today. Of course, you don't need to go as radical, but you have to bear in mind that when yachts are built, one group is people that want to make a design statement and really have a strong vision of how they would like their boat to be. And the other large group is actually more I call them lifestylers with respect, but their vision of boating is more about the use of the boat in their social life. And they are also very concerned about what is the resale value of that specific object. And the boat was therefore not very different from all the others. There's a dining room and it's here, and there's a salon, and there's a spa. Yes, you get a lot of that. And we slowly try to trigger design changes, design ideas, and some people are more receptive than others. And that applies also to the technology part. People know boats from the boat they have been on or the boat they have, and then we try to explain to them about fuel cell technology, about hybrid technology, all the different things you can do that will meet with a positive emotion from their children and grandchildren, because they've made a change to something that can be considered a little bit negative.
Now, I really want to dig into that with you, because you also made a comment a little earlier about giving a positive message about yachting, and now we're talking about the green argument of yachting as well. I really think that over the last 12 months, yachting has had a lot of negative news around it for all kinds of different reasons. Yeah. How do you think in the industry we can put a more positive message forward?
I think it's relatively simple. You have to keep on hammering out the real positives. The obvious positive is the economic impact. I mean, we as shipyards, we call it flippantly maybe recycle, but we redistribute the wealth generated by one individual into literally thousands of different individuals that live off the lifestyle of one person. And whether that's in the building or in the operation of the boat, it doesn't really matter. So that is a very, very positive aspect. The second thing is I think we need to work on is right now, if you go to a movie and there's a yacht in the movie, typically that'll be the lair of the evil person speaking with a horrible accent. And I have to tell you, for the people that I have been able to do a yacht with, they have all been very strong family people and wanted to have a boat in which they can have a healthy, cozy family life, because the world is so hectic and that the life on board of a yacht is actually the best thing you can do to your family. And if anybody can afford it, they should. The nice thing about boating, though, is it doesn't have to be a 100-meter boat. I have a little boat, it's 5.8 meters, and it means exactly the same thing for me as it does to somebody who has a 20-meter or a 50-meter. It's just a matter of what your purse is, but it doesn't make you any less happy. And I think that is the most positive value that you can put on a yacht.
I think if people hate the yachting industry because they just dislike wealthy people, there's not much we can do about that. But as regards the carbon footprint of yachts, I think the whole industry seems to be making a big effort. And Lürssen, I think, is spearheading that in many of the
No, we're doing a bit. We're doing a bit, and we're not necessarily doing the right bit. We don't know, but we're doing our bit. And if everybody does their bit, something will come out, I am convinced, that will make us all look at it in a different way. But you're right. If somebody is negative about it, they will be negative about it, and that's unfortunate. But in my life, I've noticed that typically most people live in admiration of what we do, and I think most people are proud of the fact that there is somebody who's been able to reward himself for his successes or her successes in this world. And I think that is the most powerful driver for ambition and emotion to take yourself into yachting.
And one last question for you, Michael. It's a really important question. People either watching this video or listening to the podcast who want to have a career in yachting, or who are already in the business but they want to do more and they're ambitious, what's your advice for them?
If you want to have a career in yacht, or at my end of the business, you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. It all looks very nice and dandy, and look at around, but that's our clients. That's not us. You have to be willing to work 70, 80 hours a week. You have to be willing to travel 7 or 8 days a week. You have to forego many of the things that are really, really very nice in life in order to do what you do. And it's so if you plan a career in yachting, I think you need to think very, very hard about the hard work it really is to make a difference.
Excellent. Thanks,
like
Mike.
you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. And thanks so much for your time. I really
It's a pleasure to
appreciate
see you, as always.
Thanks.